Hello, my beautiful fashionistas. Welcome back to Yvonne Winifred Joji. So this is the pattern that we are working with today. And as you see, I've marked some lines already at the top and even at the side. That is going to be our starting point, and we've left some allowance and marked a line at the side here. That line is going to be the center of the piece. So now, after getting from one shoulder to another shoulder at the back, whatever I got, the measurement I got, I divided it by 2 and I got 7.5 inches and I marked it down here. Now I just want to prepare for my shoulder line. So from that top I went down by 10.5 inches for my bust point, and then I went down at the 16-inch mark for the waist point, and then I just added 8 inches for the hip point. And now guys, I'm going to rule out these points so that I get my lines. So 10.5, 16, and at 24. So ruling out these lines, I'm going to be explaining. Just follow. So at the top we have shoulder line, then this is our bust line, or where the bust point is. Then this is the waistline where you mark your waist measurement, and this is the hip line where the hip measurement goes, and that is where we're going to stop for today. So moving on, at the 7.5-inch mark where we stopped, that is, at this point I want to be adding a sleeve. I go down by 1 inch because a human shoulder is not so straight as we see. So even here I'm going to mark the neckline measurement. The standard is 3 inches. If you go below 3 inches, that neckline might choke somebody, it might choke you. So go by 3 and more. Then this is now the shoulder line that we'll be considering. It is a little bit on a slope. So from this shoulder line now, so I have to cross check so that I have 7.5 inches for the shoulder line. After that, I go down from the shoulder line by half of the armhole measurement. It is 8.5 inches in this case. So that's what I've marked down. And I have to also have 7.5 inches as we have at the top at the shoulder line. Those are two parallel lines. So after there guys, I just rule out an armhole line, and that is our chest line or the upper bust line, and I can even rule it out from there up to the center front, but I'll do that later. So guys, next I'm going to get the midpoint of this armhole line. So it is 8.5, the midpoint is 4.25. So I mark it there, and from that midpoint I just moved in by half an inch. That is on average, but in some cases if somebody is really petite, you move in by 3/4 of an inch. If somebody is really busty, you move in by 1/4 inch. So after there, I'm going to connect like this to mark the front armhole. And we are taking all the measurements guys from this center front, but it can also be used even as a center back. That is if you're not going to add an allowance like zipper or button allowance, which is this at the back. So this can be considered as the zipper allowance for the back or the button allowance for the front, or vice versa guys, like that. So if you're going to consider it, please, you have to cut it on fold. It has to be on fold. That is if you're going to consider a zipper allowance. So starting from the center front, going across, I'm dividing the bust measurement from that I got from the body by 4, and after dividing it by 4, I mark it down. In this case, you can add ease allowance or any other sewing allowance. So after there, now I can connect my armhole like this, just as you see. So guys, we are dividing those measurements by 4, like the bust measurement and the waist measurement and the hip measurement, just because this piece here you see is one piece of the 4 pieces that we want. That is why we are dividing by 4. So for the back armhole, we start from the midpoint, then curve out to the chest line. So front, then back. So after there, I come back here at the top and I'm going to mark 3 inches for the neckline depth. Guys, if you go beyond 3 going up, sometimes it is choking to yourself or to the person you're making the pattern for. So the back I'll consider 1 inch, so I'll be considering curved neckline. But if you want, you can even do a straight neckline or a V neckline. So it is curved for the front and it is also curved for the back, but these measurements can be altered in case of the design that you're making. So guys, I'll have to, roll them out up to the allowance. That is in case of a zipper allowance for the back, or also for the front as the button allowance in case you're making a shirt, for example. So now guys, I also divide the waistline by 4, and whatever I get, I mark it down at the waistline. So then I also divide whatever I got as the measurement across the hip line, and then I mark it down. So we have to connect these points. So at first you can do some straight lines like this and a curve at the hip line. You also have to carve out those points. They shouldn't be so much straight, because the human body is not all that so pointy and straight. It is curved. It is really curved. So I connect this with a curve, and that is what we have. So at the top here, I just added 1/2 inch for the allowance, see, at the shoulder, the joining allowance at the shoulder, because in most cases people tend to forget this. But if you know that you won't forget, you can leave that out and you add the allowances at your main piece or the fabric. And also, if you know that you're forgetful, please add maybe 1 inch on all these measurements for your sewing allowance or ease allowance or any other allowances that you want to use. And also, even at the hemline, add an allowance, maybe joining allowance or the hemming allowance as you want to. So guys, this is very enough for maybe a shirt, because in most cases when you're making a female shirt, in most cases we don't add any dots. So guys, if you want it not too pointy at the side, move up by 1 inch and then connect back into the hemline. You can also even move up by just 1/2 inch and also connect into the hemline like that. So guys, if in case you're going to use a dart, just get a measurement from one nipple to your other nipple. Whatever you get, divide that by 2. In this case, I got 4 and I marked it down at the bust line, and I'm going also to mark it down at the waist line, and also from the hip line I'm just going to move up by just 2 inches. The dart stops 2 inches above the hip line, And remember, we have the 4 inches from the center, and mark it down, then connect those points into one straight line so that we start marking out the dart in case you are using a dart. So at the waistline, mark 1/2 inch on either sides of this line, and then come back here to the bust line and go down by 1 inch, by 1 inch like that. And then we are going to connect our dart from that 1 inch to the sides of this line, that the middle line that we marked, then straight down 2 inches above the hip line. So that marks the front dart, a front. Then guys, for the back dart just ends 1 inch below the chest line or the upper bust line, or 1 inch above the bust line, 1 inch above the bust line. So that is it here at the chest line. So now this is the chest line, which we would have marked earlier on, but it is fine. So I'm just going to use this black pen to illustrate for you. So you start from that 1 inch above the bust line, then go down to the waistline. And also guys, from the waistline you have to continue your back dart to the 2 inches above the hip line. That is how it will be in case you're using that. So that is for the back. So also guys, in most cases a back is not all that straight. A human back is not straight, so we're going to increase this waistline, and along that waistline from the center front you move in by 1/2 inch, only 1/2 inch, and only at the waistline. So after that you're going to mark from the waistline just straight to where your hip line starts from, and also from that waistline up to where your back neckline curve starts from, like that, so that you avoid a bulge at the back on your dress. So guys, whatever we've done, you have to do it also at the allowance, that is in case you're going to use the zipper allowance. So mark 1/2 inch from the allowance, where the allowance starts from, and connect just as we did before. So from the 1/2 inch at the waistline straight up, kind of, it is a diagonal line or a curve up to where the hip line starts from, and also connect it up to where your back neckline curve starts from, simply like that. So that is what we have. So from here there to here, that is the zipper allowance that we'll be using. So now this is what I have so far. This is how it looks like, simply the basic bodice. So now I can just cut it out. First I'm just going to cut out the back markings as we marked them earlier on. So the back armhole, don't forget that it is what we cut out of, before or first. And also the back line, that is in case your back is higher than the front. But if your front is higher than the back, you have to consider that, guys. So not everything is a constant in this bodice, but you will learn more as you go on making your patterns and as you go on sewing. So this is what we have, and beautifully that is what we have. So for the front, you consider your front or the center front and the front neckline and the armhole if you're cutting out. And if you have to add the dart allowance at the side in case you have to use it. And that is it, guys. See you in my next video.